As an addition to my previous video, where the BVRLA are worried that people are going to start clocking cars, well, not cars, EVs. They're going to start clocking EVs from 2028 because the government have put a 3p per mile EV charge on it. This is what's happening now. In addition to the massive administrative and operational headaches for EV fleets, it creates an incentive for people to tamper with their mileages. They've been doing it for years, Toby. Get your fucking head out the sand. Stop talking and making up excuses why the government shouldn't bring a fair tax for electric vehicles in. So this blog was written on the 20th of March 2014. We're on the 2nd of December 2025 now. So 11 years ago, there or thereabouts, I wrote this blog, and this is what happened. It's a true story, and the BVRLA expect you to believe that clocking on lease cars is going to just come in with the 3p a mile EVED tax. This is called clockers, customers and imbeciles. Many years ago, my dad had a taxi firm. I was in his office when a call came in from a member of the public to say that one of our taxis had broken down in a place miles from anywhere, referred to as the Moss. This is at St Anne's, and where the radar station used to be. The car in question was a Cortina, and it belonged to my dad. It was being driven by a ginger-headed guy who drove the car during the day and paid my dad by the mile for using the taxi. Some reason, up until recently, I don't usually get on with ginger-haired people. I wouldn't have got on with this guy no matter what colour his hair was, and I told my dad that I didn't trust him. My dad was going to call him on the radio to ask if he was okay, but I stopped him. I couldn't understand why he hadn't radioed in for assistance if he'd genuinely broken down. So I jumped in my car and I headed to the Moss. It was a lovely day, and I could see the car in the distance. The driver couldn't see me as he was reading the paper. I parked up and I walked the rest of the way towards the car. I could see the windows were open. The car was on axle stands. The engine was revving and the rear wheels were spinning backwards. The car was in reverse gear with the back wheels off the ground going backwards. In the old days, the Speedo took its drive off the gearbox, and although it was a painstaking process, you could actually wind the clock back using this method. The driver was cheating my dad out of money. I thrust my arm through the open window, removed the keys and said, "Guess what, Ginge? You're fired. Do you want me to call you a taxi?" So now to my story. There's an old motor trader's tale that a trader bought a car at the auction with the intent of winding the clock back. When he removed the speedometer, a piece of paper fell out and on it was written, "Oh no, not again." Clocking cars has always been rife in the motor trade, and it needs stamping out. Remember, I wrote this in 2014. A few weeks ago, what started off as a favour for a friend turned into a crusade for me. But unfortunately, I failed in my duties, and all those people out there who think that I only get wound up about EVs and lies about EVs, I've always got wound up about petrols, diesels, anything that's wrong in the motor trade where people are getting ripped off. I don't like, and I've always brought it to the attention of the public or the trading standards or whatever. I won't name any names to protect the guilty, the incompetents, the oblivious, the obnoxious, and finally the people who should have known better and should have taken ownership of the problem. My friend is a motor trader in every sense of the word. He buys motors from the trade, usually main dealers, and sells to the trade, used car dealers. He's a great lad. I've known him a long time. He's honest, he's trustworthy, he has a lovely family. His kids have grown up very, very good. Great business ethics, and his word is his bond. I'd have no hesitation in recommending him. He'd bought a Mercedes-Benz, which a main dealer had taken in part exchange. The car had 49,000 miles on the clock. The customer had signed to say the mileage on the car was correct, but said he didn't have a service book. That was true at the time because digital service history was just coming in. Whenever you take a car in part exchange, so as not to leave yourself wide open, and it appear that you've clocked a vehicle, if it has been clocked, you get the customer to sign that to the best of his knowledge and put the exact mileage as he's got out of the car on the form, get him to sign it. If anything happens in future, that leaves you in the clear, or should leave you in the clear. You are supposed to do your due diligence checks and check it with HPI and mileage register and so on. But he didn't have a service book. He said he hadn't been given one by the garage that sold it to him, but they had told him the car had a digital service history. In other words, it was stored on the Mercedes-Benz computer system and in the ECU of the car. To me, and still, digital service history isn't worth the paper it's written on. I'd rather see it in a service book. My mate was pretty much the same, and mostly he dealt with older dealers like me, and they were the same too. My mate had underwritten the vehicle on the understanding that he could trace the service history and get a duplicate service book stamped. He only deals with old-fashioned garages, so he knew that no one would buy it off him. This was at the time. If he told them it had a digital service history, everything's got digital service history now. Let's face it, only an idiot would. Even though my mate only deals with the trade, he still performs the due diligence checks that you're obligated to carry out if you're selling to the public. So he set about backtracking. The last owner had a service invoice. He was in luck, or so he thought. The same garage had sold the car at 20,162 miles and had also carried out the last two services. My mate ordered a service book from their parts department and asked them to look through the history and stamp it accordingly with the service department and then post the book. The book duly arrived through the post with a service stamp at 27,316 miles in July 2012 and 63,512 miles in July 2013. The problem was it was now October 2013 and the car was only showing 49,159 miles. There was a discrepancy of 24,000 miles. Now I'm always calling service book stampers. The amount of times they get it wrong. And MOT inspectors get the mileage wrong and they ruin the service history of a car. They write it on the job sheet and then it goes on the service invoice. That stays with the car for virtually ever unless you can get them to retract it within so many days and get Vosa to change it on the MOT. You've had it, and it causes loads of problems all the time. You wouldn't believe how often it happens. We were convinced it was a slip of the pen by either the mechanic or the service advisor when the car had been serviced last. We checked the MOT history, and on the 17th of the 1st, 2013, the car had been showing 36,718 miles. So again, this pointed to a clerical error. The servicing dealer was contacted and the story that it looked like they had made a mistake entering the mileage, and all the reasons why were explained to the service advisor. She promised to sort it out and ring back. She didn't. We rang again and again, but they weren't helpful. They said they were right and there was nothing they could do to help. They said that they had got the last mileage of the car's digital service history, so it must be right. They'd got that off the ECU. Their explanation was that the last owner must have clocked the car. When we told her that it had been MOT'd at 36,718 miles, she said that he must have clocked it twice. This was a ludicrous explanation. So we arranged to take the car to the dealer and have them connect it to their Sentry Mercedes-Benz diagnostic equipment, which would read all the information off the electronic control unit, the ECU. We got there, and after keeping us waiting for 4 hours, the service advisor came out with 5 sheets of paper under her arm. She said that the car must have been clocked. My mate is an extremely calm and level-headed guy. I've known him for 20 years. It was 20 years when I wrote this. It's 30 years now. I've never seen him lose his temper. I've only seen him lose his temper once now, 10 years later. Until then, I could see that the thought of losing his trade profit and possibly even his reputation as a stand-on guy had upset him. So I stepped in. Believe me, when it's left to me to be the voice of calm and reason, the situation has got way out of hand. I asked the girl if we could see a hard copy of the service invoice, but apparently this had been misplaced, as had the copy of their used car PDI sheet. Remember, they sold it. The service administrator was clearly exasperated. She was way out of her depth, and her boss, who hadn't got the balls to come out and talk to us, was using her as a human shield. She said, "I can't keep going backwards and forwards trying to sort this out for you. I have other things to do." I asked her if I could examine the paperwork, and she thrust them at me. While I'd been waiting, I'd drunk many cups of cappuccino in their service reception. Fueled with caffeine, I rapidly typed the details of the car into the Vosa website and called up the previous MOTs. This dealer had MOT'd the car when they sold it in February 2012, and it was recorded at 20,162 miles. I had the smoking gun, which should now get her boss's full attention and get him up off his arse and out to speak to us, and to help us sort out a problem which is a blight to the motor trade. I noticed that the Zentry report had a day cycle counter. A quick mental calculation. Okay, I opened the calculator and the calendar function on my iPhone, and I realised that according to the paperwork she'd given me, the vehicle had covered 38,626 miles in July 2011. So it couldn't have been the last owner that had clocked the car. It had had to have been done before they bought it. If they hadn't been a Mercedes-Benz main dealer, I'd have suspected them. But even I still have a little faith left. Only a little. I explained the connotations to her. If this was the case, the car deal could be unravelled, and the last owner would be within his rights to bring the car back to them and demand his money back, plus interest, plus whatever else judges penalise motor traders for these days. We demanded to see the general manager, as this had now become a very serious situation for them too. Basically, they've sold the clock car. We were shown through to the general manager, but he turned out to be the service manager. Again, my friend explained the situation. If I'm honest, I don't like service managers. Over the years, they've cost me many, many thousands of pounds doing recon work on sales cars that wasn't necessary, so that they could make their department's figures stack up at the cost of some of my profits. To me, service managers are akin to Robin Hood, except they just rob from the sales department, don't give it to the poor, they just keep it. This service manager was obnoxious. I listened to him talking down to my mate till I couldn't stand it any longer. And then I told him a few facts. Before he tried to dispute them, he turned, looked at me like I was something he'd just scraped off his shoe, and snarled, "Who are you?" Well, I'm glad you asked that. I'm someone who's been in the motor trade for 40 plus years, and who clearly has a better understanding of it than you do. I don't think you've quite grasped how serious this situation is. I'd done well until then. I'd managed to remain calm and reasonable for all of about 5 minutes. But that was pretty much the end of any further discussions. He didn't even look up from his computer when he said, "We're too busy to devote our resources to this. I'll check later and ring you tomorrow." He may as well have just told us to F off, because that's what he meant. He had no intention of calling us. I waited 24 hours, then emailed the chairman of the company. He responded virtually straight away. We traded emails, and he copied his brand manager in, and then asked them to contact me. The general manager at the time was very big on Twitter very much we do everything right. Anyway, the brand manager didn't contact me. After another reminder to this urgent problem, I got a phone call to say that the brand manager was on holiday for 2 weeks. To be fair, I got a phone call from their finance director to say that he was trying to sort the matter out and he would come back to me. He didn't. After a text to his phone, he called me to tell me that they were satisfied that it was the slip of a pen and they were trying to sort it out with the manufacturer and correct the digital service history. He also set up a meeting for me with the brand manager. It was too late, as my friend had bought the car back from the dealer he'd sold it to, and the dealer who he had bought the car from had given my friend his money back. I decided to go to the meeting anyway, as I was curious, and I knew if I didn't sort the matter out, it would rear its ugly head in the future, possibly with some unsuspecting dealer. I attended the meeting, and although I was welcomed, I didn't feel welcome. The brand manager asked me why I was so interested. I got the feeling that they thought I was sticking my nose in where it didn't belong, which perhaps I do. So what? Or I was going to try and blackmail them, or somehow I was trying to make some money, which wasn't the case. They apologised for the behaviour of the service manager. I appreciated that, but to be honest, the way the service manager talked to us would only have bothered me if I'd respected him. And I didn't. I'd forgotten more than they'll ever know. But it's the thought that counts. Then they asked me to explain why I thought the car had been clocked, and I did so. I also told them that I couldn't be certain that it was correct, as I wasn't familiar with the workings of their Sentry diagnostic systems and the printed readout I had. It was obvious that they didn't know how it worked either. But at that moment, he produced an invoice from an auction showing the mileage when they bought it. This vindicated them completely from any wrongdoing. However, it did point towards them retailing a clocked car, and this was a main Mercedes-Benz dealer, which they had unwittingly bought from an auction and then sold it to an unsuspecting customer. I asked them if it was as easy as plugging their diagnostic machine into the car to check the mileage. Why didn't they do it with every car that came into stock? In fact, why didn't Mercedes-Benz insist on it as part of their approved used car scheme checks? They had no answer to my question. Now for me, reading between the lines, I would suggest that the first owner acquired the car on contract hire or personal contract purchase. He'd take delivery of the car, agreeing to a 24-month, 20,000 mile agreement, and he'd done double the mileage. Before handing the car back, he'd clocked the car so that he wouldn't have to pay the leasing company the excess mileage charge, which I would guesstimate to be in the region of £4,000. So he just paid one of those mileage correction services that are advertised these days for £250 to knock it back. Then he'd returned it to the leasing company, who sent it to an auction. The brand manager should have stopped there, because then he produced a photocopy of the missing service invoice / job card. Written at the top of the invoice / job card was the mileage that was showing on the car. He told me that he was satisfied the car hadn't been clocked. I wasn't, and I pointed out that that could have been written in at any time after the event, or even just before I turned up. So I asked if he was satisfied with the mileage, could he get me a service book stamped up and an explanation on his letter-headed paper, the Mercedes dealer's letter-headed paper, in case the discrepancy came to light again in the future. He wouldn't do it. Then I was told they'd been in touch with the garage that my friend had bought it off, and that they had taken the same view. I asked precisely what that view was, and he said something like that it's not worth the time and effort of sorting the matter out. I realised that any further conversation with these two morons would be futile. I apologised for wasting the time, put my stuff away, drank my coffee and left. As I got to the door, I turned and left them with my final thought. You have the opportunity to sort the matter out now. You could buy it back at today's trade price, correct the mileage if it has been clocked, and retail the car. ICE cars in those days didn't drop like EVs do today, so they could have got out of it without losing any money. It's a win-win situation for you. No upset customers, no solicitors' costs, no bad publicity, and some profit to boot. If you don't, I guarantee it will come back and bite you in the ass. Obviously, they didn't heed my warning. As I was driving past the local garage a week later, I saw the car for sale on the forecourt. I checked their advert on my mobile and it stated the mileage as 49,200. I emailed a link to the advert to the chairman and the brand manager with a message. Well, who could have seen that coming? The car disappeared off the internet and their forecourt the very next day. I have no way of knowing whether they had sorted out the mileage, but I didn't get a reply, so I remained sceptical. As I say, that happened in 2014 with a lease car. Toby Poston, the BVRLA chief executive, said the government's plan for a new paper mail EV excise duty tax from 2028 is the wrong policy at the wrong time. In addition to the massive administrative and operational headaches for EV fleets, it creates an incentive for people to tamper with their mileages. They've been doing it for years, Toby. Get your fucking head out the sand. Stop talking and making up excuses why the government shouldn't bring a fair tax for electric vehicles in. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye bye.